Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Trumbore with your nightly review for Wednesday, June 5th. It is 4:02 p.m. Eastern Time. Dow Jones finished down 216 points, back below 15,000 to 14,960, 1.4%. S&P 500 lost 1.4% to 1608, meaning it is down about 4.5% off the intraday high of 1687. Nasdaq down 1.3%. Gold $1,401, 1401. Oil 93.60, and the 10-year Treasury closed with a yield of 2.09%. Wednesday being Bull Bear Day, the bulls came in at 45.8, a big drop. Bears 20.8, so the spread of 25, well below the 30 danger level. The ISM non-manufacturing reading for May, service sector, came in at 53.7 from 53.1 in April. A little better than expected. The ADP jobs report for May showed an increase of only 135,000. That was not good. That was one of the reasons for today's decline. The sequester is once again back on the table as an excuse, and perhaps a good one. There is more Federal Reserve talk of tapering from various Fed governors. Today, the Beige Book of Regional Economic Activity came out. The economy expanded at a modest to moderate pace, as the Beige Book described it, in 11 of 12 Federal Reserve districts. So some took the word modest to mean slowdown. Hiring increased at a measured pace in several districts, with some contacts noting difficulty finding qualified workers. Most districts noted slight to moderate gains in consumer spending and a moderate increase in vehicle sales. Manufacturing increased across most regions as residential construction was a boon to suppliers, and 4 districts reported increased demand for lumber or wood products. The New York region reported steady business activity in manufacturing, and Boston firms said they're reasonably optimistic about the outlook. In Europe, Eurostats reported that the final reading on Eurozone GDP for the first quarter was down, as initially estimated, 0.2% over the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, it was down 0.6%. The European Commission expects GDP to increase 0.1% in the second quarter. Yippee! Retail sales in the Eurozone fell 0.5% in April over March, worse than expected. Eurozone services, that reading rose to 47.2 from 47 in April. But new car sales in Germany fell 9.9% in May. BMW saw its sales fall nearly 11% in Germany over a year earlier. That's not good. In the UK, which I've been saying is doing much better, and the numbers certainly bear it out, a UK service sector reading came in at 54.9 in May from 52.9 in April, the best in 14 months. So take a bow, David Cameron. And in Latvia is becoming the 18th member of the Eurozone beginning in 2014. Congratulations to them. In Asia, Tokyo, the Nikkei fell 3.8%. This after Prime Minister Abe laid out his growth strategy to reboot the economy and beat deflation. Now, incredibly, the Nikkei has had 5 days of 3% plus declines in just the last 2 weeks. And what's not getting any press is the fact that the little guy in Japan, the little investor, was just beginning to get back into the market about 2 weeks ago at the top. In Australia, first quarter GDP was up 0.6%, 2.5% annualized. That was a little less than expected. And finally, in Syria, Bashar Assad's army, with major help from Hezbollah, has taken full control of the strategic town of Qusair near the Lebanese border. No word on casualties, but no doubt they are extensive. Pictures are showing the town reduced to rubble. Hundreds and hundreds of civilians are wounded and not receiving any medical care. It's a freaking disaster. And now the peace talks are in serious doubt. Turning to the case against China. And I'm going to start slowly. Hope I didn't scare any of you off yesterday. This is going to be a multi-part series. President Obama is having what's being labeled a casual summit at Rancho Mirage in California this weekend with Chinese President Xi Jinping, where it is hoped the two will really get to know each other and exchange ideas about how best to manage a complex and highly combustible relationship. Remember, under normal circumstances, President Xi is going to be in power the next decade, and he is also in charge of the military. Analysts in Beijing say Xi's two main goals at the summit are to nurture trust while projecting self-confidence. There should be no doubt who is in charge. If the two strike up a friendship, good. Regardless of how you feel about President Obama and his domestic policies, and regardless of whether you believe he is already a lame duck, his remaining 3.5 years in office could easily be dominated by foreign policy, and on virtually every major issue, whether it is North Korea or Iran's nuclear programs, Syria's war, relations with Japan and South Korea, territorial disputes in the South and East China Seas, Africa, you name it, it would certainly be better for all of us if Presidents Obama and Xi can talk to each other with a common respect to keep hotspots from boiling over. So at the top of the agenda will be North Korea and Iran, and then cybersecurity. China needs to understand that there is a difference between snooping and hacking, government to government, and the stealing of intellectual property. The United States and China have now agreed to hold regular, high-level talks on how to set standards of behavior for cybersecurity and commercial espionage. They are to begin next month, but no one expects the process to immediately yield a significant reduction in the daily intrusions from China. But somehow rules of behavior must be established. But I have no cause for optimism. The head of the U.S. Cyber Command and Director of the National Security Agency, General Keith Alexander, has said China's cyber attacks have resulted in the greatest transfer of wealth in history. For its part, the Chinese will press the Americans on their use of cyber weapons. While there is no evidence they have been used against Chinese targets, these sophisticated cyber attacks on Iran's nuclear program by the U.S. and Israel are often cited by the Chinese news media and military journals as evidence that Washington, too, uses cyberspace for strategic advantage. The talks over computer hacking will start as part of the strategic and economic dialogue in the annual meeting of Chinese and U.S. officials on a broad range of issues. Speaking at a security conference in Singapore the other day, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said the United States has expressed our concerns about the growing threat of cyber intrusions, some of which appear to be tied to the Chinese government and military. Hagel delivered the rebuke in China's backyard, with members of Beijing's government in the audience. Major General Ya Yunzhu, director of the Center for China-America Defense Relations at the People's Liberation Army's Academy of Military Science, challenged Hagel to better explain America's intentions in its building up of the U.S. military across the regions. "Thank you for mentioning China several times," she told Mr. Hagel, adding that America's new shift to the Pacific has been widely interpreted as an attempt to counter China's rising influence and to offset the increasing military capabilities of the Chinese PLA. However, China is not convinced. That was General Yao. She asked Hagel how he can assure China that the increased military deployments to the region are part of an effort to build a more positive relationship with Beijing. That's really the whole point behind closer military-to-military relationships, Hagel replied. "We don't want miscalculations and misunderstandings and misinterpretations. And the only way you do that is if you talk to each other." Hagel said the U.S. welcomes a strong and emerging China that takes on responsibilities for security in the region, and that Beijing and Washington have to be inclusive and direct with each other. "I think we've made continued progress," Hagel said, "and we'll make more progress. I'm not convinced of that personally, but there are other issues that the two presidents should have on the agenda, though odds are they won't come up, like China's total lack of respect and regard for planet Earth and its resources. Try fishing and poaching. China is responsible for a lion's share of the overfishing, illegal overfishing, taking place worldwide. The Chinese are total bastards in this regard, ignoring all acceptable norms of behavior. I should add the Japanese aren't far behind in this category. And then there is the poaching issue. It's sickening how some of the Earth's most majestic creatures, like elephants and rhinos, are being slaughtered to extinction for freaking ivory. If Xi Jinping wants to be an influential leader in Asia, he can start right here. Give a speech promising to do his part to enforce a global ban on the ivory trade. Show some common sense of decency. But I'm not in the least bit optimistic on this topic either, nor on the behavior of the Chinese on virtually every other issue. Tomorrow I'll get into another, how China has totally screwed U.S. investors. Take care.